Hey there. So today's essay review is actually from May-June 2015, set 3. So if you can see the question, it is actually an essay question, which I've actually not covered yet for my channel so far. So I thought that this will be a good time to do so. Yeah, so let's go through the question. The Postal Rule of acceptance is no longer of any real significance to the formation of a valid contract. Critically assess the truth of this statement. So as usual, the question, usually for essay questions, I would say that you should treat it the same as ELS questions, whereby two issues that you need to highlight first. Firstly, which chapter this question is covering and what is the question asking you to do. So obviously this is from the chapter Offer and Acceptance, and more particularly is asking you about Postal Rule under the topic of acceptance. And what exactly is asking you to do, I mean, more focus is on this thing here, the statement here, that it no longer has any real significance to the formation of valid contracts, right? So yeah, so it asks you to critically assess the truth of this statement. So what I'm going to do here is to just go through this sample essay with you, okay, which is done by one of my students, okay, and along the way I will try to pick out anything that is either good or bad and then we'll comment on it, right? Hopefully this will actually help you in your own essay writing endeavor, right? Let's start off with the introduction. So a valid binding contract is formed when there is offer and acceptance. An offer is a proposition put by one person, meaning the offerer, to another, to the offeree. The offerer is willing to be bound by the terms of the proposition if the other person accepts. Acceptance of an offer means unconditional agreement to all the terms of that offer, and it must correspond to all those terms. Acceptance can be made in oral writing or by way of conduct, especially for unilateral contracts. This one, I guess the student is trying to refer to conduct here, which is fine. The general rule of acceptance is that it must be communicated and it must reach the offerer. However, there are exceptions to the general rule. For example, unilateral contracts acceptance that are made through conduct. Through conduct, acceptance is where performance of an act began, and another exception is the postal acceptance rule. All right, this I feel that there is too much information in the introduction itself. All right, and as you can see here, this is the second paragraph, even though I haven't actually gone to it yet, okay. She goes straight into talking about postal rule, which I feel that is actually not good already, because okay, as much as I know the question is asking you to focus on the postal rule, but then the postal rule is actually a subtopic under the topic of acceptance, and she did actually highlight it that postal rule is an exception to the acceptance. But then okay, we shouldn't actually go too blatantly straight into addressing the focus of the question, okay. So, and after all, this is just an introduction, okay. She can actually leave some part regarding the explanation of the workings of offer and acceptance, and of course especially regarding acceptance, in another paragraph as a fresh point here, okay, in between this paragraph and this paragraph. And then of course, okay, she should be focusing a little bit more on the connection between acceptance, okay, the principle regarding acceptance and also postal rule, because the thing about acceptance is that it must be communicated, right? And the postal rule is going against that already, okay. So there should actually be some connection between these two points first, these two concepts first, before going straight into the postal rule or postal acceptance, okay. So I'll just very quickly just put a note here, so as to later we'll try to review it again, right? So here basically there's too much info on acceptance acceptance in intro, right, should separate into a bridging paragraph. Okay, where we can discuss further on the connection between acceptance and the postal rule with case illustration, and of course in more detail, right? Okay, and yeah, and other than that, it's also possible to actually talk about silence as well. Okay, because I mean there are ways for you to actually relate silence to postal rule, because postal rule is whereby the offerer doesn't necessarily have to hear from the offeree, because after all, okay, postal rule is whereby, I hope that you know already, okay, that postal rule is whereby as soon as you post it, it's considered as accepted already. So basically it's like there's some silence going on there, right? So I guess you could also, right, discuss briefly on silence and relate it to postal rule, maybe. Okay, right. Right, so I guess this is more or less about it. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing. There's no thesis statement. I know that thesis statement isn't something which a lot of teachers actually encourage it, or even make it a norm or something like that. But this is, I feel that if you want to write a proper essay, you should actually have a thesis statement, so that it's not just for the examiner, okay, but also for you, so that you know where you're heading to. All right, so here, right, usually the thesis statement could be a separate paragraph, or at the end. Usually what I like to do is that at the end of the introduction, and then to actually put a thesis statement there to show what you're going to write for the rest of the essay. So the thesis statement should sound something like, okay, in order to critically assess this quote here as to whether or not the postal rule is no longer significant, we will have to actually go through the how the contract actually works, and how the acceptance, communication, and also postal rule actually works, okay, together with our own evaluation and stuff like that, right? So yeah, right, so generally it's okay here, other than the thesis statement. And yeah, regarding the too much information, there should actually be separated, right? Now next. Okay, postal acceptance rule, or postal rule, operates by following the principle that an acceptance is sent by post. It takes effect immediately when the letter is posted, rather than when it is communicated. Okay, fine. The postal rule can be illustrated under Adams and Linsell, and that she actually go through the whole thing here, as you can see here, right? In this case, on 2nd September 1917, D wrote to C offering to sell sheep fleeces requiring response. I don't think I need to go through this whole thing with you, but I mean, you can just pause the video and then read it yourself. All right. Okay. Then after that, all right, let's start right here. Before the postal rule can be applied, there are some preconditions that must be fulfilled. Firstly, the postal rule only applies when the letter is properly addressed and stamped. Okay, fine. Okay, going through the preconditions and stuff like that. Okay, with some case example. Besides, post must be reasonable method of acceptance, as in Hampton Fraser. Okay, good. Use some of these cases as well. Despite offer having been handed in person, acceptance by post was reasonable because parties were based in different towns. Okay, so generally I feel that let me see whether it's done. Yeah, it's done. Right, so generally I feel that this part is okay, right, where just introducing the postal rule and all that. But then, like I say, okay, there's like not enough context to this thing, in the sense that there is no connection between this part here and this part here, or this is too rushed. It's too rushed when everything is actually in the introduction itself. Okay, in order to make the essay a bit more critical, okay, it'd be good to actually have a little bit more paragraphs, because I would feel, okay, that I've probably mentioned this a lot of times already in my earlier videos, that for if you're really looking for an A, the average pages that you need to write is around like 3 to 4, maybe even 5, depending on your handwriting. So if we, I mean, things like this, okay, regarding the this part here where I say that I need to mention, okay, regarding the bridging point, okay, where you need to actually talk about the acceptance and the connection between the acceptance and postal rule first, it should actually be there, because here there's only like one, two, about 2.5 pages, so that's why the content wise, okay, is not enough, okay, right? So that thing has to be here, right? Very important, right? Then next thing, okay, yeah, okay. So next thing is postal rule has three main practical consequences. Firstly, according to the case of household fire insurance in Gen, even the letter of acceptance, okay, that's fine, fail to reach the offerer, acceptance is still considered to have taken place. In this case, the court held that D was a shareholder and owned the money even though he never received the letter of acceptance, and thus he was not aware of it. Secondly, the offer may be revoked by the offerer anytime before acceptance is communicated. If an acceptance is posted after the offerer posts a revocation of the offer, but before the revocation has been received, the acceptance will be binding. Okay, right. So yeah, it's talking about revocation, even though it's not really that relevant, but it's okay, right? Because this one, of course, is still related back to the postal rule. Okay. All right, then Brian will be and Tenhoven, it is highlighted that revocation must be communicated. Thirdly, the case of Dunmore and Alexander has established that post acceptance can be withdrawn by faster means of communication, but the court view arbiter at this point. Okay, I think different books say different things about this thing, but generally I would just say that Mm, I mean, yeah, fine. If you leave it as orbiter, I think it's still okay. All right, okay, fine. But it's all right, okay. Because this part here is actually still discussing on the postal rule, so it's not really addressing the question yet, okay, regarding its significance. So I guess it's fine. Okay, no problem there. Next one, in assessing the truth that the postal rules still have real significance in today's world, the postal rule has extended to cover acceptance by telegram and now telemessages, as in Cohen versus O'Connor. All right, good. So this is the part where she's trying to address the critical component part of the essay already, and she mentioned about telegram, instant mode of communication, which is actually a very good point. It means that the postal rule now causes a wide range of the ways of communication and must be by the court if such case before them. Okay. In addition, even in today's society, many offerers still want written and signed evidence that the offer has been accepted and may make it a specific requirement of the letter itself, in which case the rule clearly applies even today. Right, so this is also a very good point, okay, as in like she's actually giving a real life current, very current kind of example, okay, right, which if you're out there, if you work in offices and stuff like that, that things like this are still happening, whereby it's not just about agreeing on the phone, it's not just through emails, but it's also literally still writing it down, that kind of situation, right? On the other hand, okay, so this whole part here is generally okay, all right, no problem there. On the other hand, where acceptances are made by an instant mode of communication, okay, still talking about instant mode of communication, the posting rule is inapplicable, all right? And in Torres versus Miles Far East Corporation, the Court of Appeal held that because telex allows almost instant communication, the parties were in the same position as if they had negotiated in each other's presence or over the telephone. So the postal rule did not apply, and acceptance did not take effect until it had been received by the claimants. All right. And then Antoras's decision was approved in Bringibon, right? Good, which had almost identical facts to Antaurus, but in this case, the telex had been received out of working hours. The House of Lords held that acceptance could only be effective and a contract is formed once the office is reopened. Okay, generally good point, okay, to actually be talking more about informal communication and then try to like make some distinction here and there, okay, but of course it will be good if you go in a little bit more detail. All right, next one, in conclusion, the postal rule is no longer significant because in the era that we are now living in, instantaneous modes of communication where postal rule is inapplicable, it's more commonly and frequently used. Okay, majority of people do not use post today unless the offer clearly stated using the postal acceptance, which makes the postal rule less important. Okay, this one is just something that she just puts it at the end there, which is also okay, but it could actually be something that could be explored even further at the evaluation component there. Okay. Right. So generally, okay, it is good. I would actually give okay, just hold on there. Overall marks. Hold on. I would just okay, fine. I'll just give a overall marks first of around 18 to 20 over 25, or even maybe even 17 to 19, around there. Okay, it's always more or less there. Okay, but before that, okay, let's just review a little bit first, and then we'll look at the marking scheme very fast to see how accurate is the answer here, and whether or not I've actually give the correct marks. So generally, the biggest problem, I guess, is just this part here where it's too rushed and it goes straight into the postal rule. Okay, so should have some development paragraph or development point here first before actually going into the postal rule. Okay, so that is the biggest problem there. Okay, the rest, okay, this part is good. Okay, no problem. Here is also okay, but maybe the issue regarding its evaluation, okay, may not actually be enough, okay, I feel, okay, because although unless you can count this part here, yes, okay, this part here is actually also the evaluation part where it's actually talking about its application today and stuff like that, so I guess it's still okay. So that's why I'm still able to give like 18 to 20 marks, or around like 17, around there. Okay, right, because the biggest problem is just here only. Okay, right. Right. All right. So let's look at the marking scheme a little bit before I end the video. Okay. So this is the marking scheme which I just copy pasted from the marking scheme itself. So it reads that candidates should set the question in the context of general rule of offer and acceptance, i.e., that a contract is formed once a firm offer has been communicated by offerer to offeree, and that an unconditional acceptance has been communicated by offeree to offerer, and explain that the posting rule has arisen as an exception to the general rule. So this is part of where I was talking about earlier. Okay, that you need to actually talk a little bit more about often acceptance, especially acceptance and the postal rule. Okay, regarding communication. Okay, like the Teen versus Hoffman unconditional acceptance, that kind of situation. Okay, first before you actually going into the postal acceptance. Okay, so here postal acceptance takes effect from the posting rather than communication due to the inevitable delay between posting and receipt. Okay, Adams will answer. So fine. Okay, the student did actually put this in there. Candidates may outline circumstances under which the rule applies specified or reasonable means of acceptance, Anton Fraser, posting proper manner, okay, London, London, and properly address and stamp, okay, Howard Securities and Hugh, and briefly explain the effects of letters of acceptance that never arrive. So I think all these things also the student did mention, which is around here. Okay, all right, it's around here. Yeah, and also here. All right. Then next, does the rule still have any real significance in today's world of instantaneous electronic communication? Right. So which the student did address also, and also did highlight all these things again, like electronic communication, instant mode of communication. Right. The rule, next one, the rule was extended to cover acceptance by telegram, now telemessages, Cohen versus O'Connor, in which the student also did mention, all right, and did, yes, it's here, right, the good point that I mentioned just now. Next one, it would appear, however, that where acceptances are made by instant mode of communication, the posting rule is inapplicable as the acceptor will know at once that they have not managed to communicate with the offerer and will need to try again. Okay, so the student did mention about breaking bond and stark style, but I think hmm, okay, only effective. Okay, right, can. But it'll be good to have a little bit more elaboration on that in relation to instant mode of communication. All right. So, does the rule have any real significance today? Even in today's society, many offerers will still want written signed evidence that an offer has been accepted and make it a specific requirement of the offer itself. In which case, the rule clearly applies even today. All right. So, yeah, which a student did also mention about this. Something here, but you see, it's actually in the conclusion. It actually can be something that the student discuss in a little bit more detail. Okay, as you can see, this is actually something which, something not really the conclusion yet. Okay, so the present day significance of the rule must be assessed even if when, yeah, okay, fine, never mind. So yeah, so I guess from the marking scheme we can say that, okay, so this is the part in which the student didn't really elaborate on, and also this part here regarding significance of the date. Right, so I guess my marks is, yeah, is more or less justified. Okay, as she actually missed out two important part, or at least one more important than the other, and so yeah, around 17 to 20 marks around there. Okay, I think it should be fine. All right, so I hope this uh, essay review actually helps you to understand how to actually write your essay, and I hope that you can actually try to emulate from it as well. Okay, just by, I mean, you can just pause the video to see what the student has actually written, and then maybe you can also just try to learn from there as well. All right, so thank you for watching.